speaking about the resurrection of the dead that took place at Sinai. As God gave the first two commandments, it says, Percha Nishmasam, that after each commandment, the Jewish people died, and God resurrected them with the Tal of Torah. We now continue chapter number 4, Zehu, and that is the meaning of the pasuk in Hazinu. Yarif Kambatel Lichi Tizal Ketalim Rasi, my doctrine shall drop like rain, mutters rain. And Tizal Katal Imrasi, and my speech shall distill like dew. Tal is dew. Question is, just like there are two levels. One is rain and one is dew, which represents Asosol Elah. Which represent, as we spoke earlier, two levels in Avodas Hashem, two levels in serving God. There's one level that is compared to rain, which means through the awakening from below, through the fact that he studies Torah and does mitzvahs and davins and gives tzedakah. This action from below creates an action from above, or a reaction from above. And that is the idea of rain. But dew, we explained, when it comes to dew is independent. That is, God gives us dew whether or not we are going to do action. What does this mean? What does this mean when we talk about God's hashba, God's intervention and God's blessing in the world? Just like there are two levels, rain and dew, in general, of God's intervention and sustenance of the world. The same is true. There are two levels in Torah. There's lichi, there is number one lichi and imrasi. What is that? The Indian Shafar, the Torah, Hanikra Motor. There's a level of lichi which represents external level of the Torah, and that is the idea of rain, which is nigla the Torah, and nimshach idea of it is ha'adam. So this comes down through a person's preoccupation, through a person's involvement, through a person's yigia, work, and toil in Torah. As it says, I tried hard. And I found. Timing, that person is believed, says the Gemara. Move on, and from here we understand that the finding of the object in deadness is compared to the toil. In other words, you lost a diamond in a haystack. You know it's there somewhere. So you're looking. Eventually, you're going to find it. If you work hard, you'll find it. You won't work hard, you're not going to find it. Even though it's explained other places that in truth, a mitzvah, a law of finding a lost object, has nothing to do with the toiling. For example, you're walking down the street, you didn't lose anything. You're walking down the street and you find a diamond ring. The one who found it does not know who lost it. And you found it naturally. You weren't even looking for anything. However, you're still walking there, you're still looking. It says you will look over there. But in truth, the general idea of finding a mitzvah, finding a lost object, means that you lost it and now you're looking for it. And therefore it says, where should you look for it? You should look for it where you lost it. So this is the idea of rain. Rain is that according to the effort is the reward. And even though the reward is even more than the effort, but still there needs to be effort. When we talk about the dew of Torah, comes from itself. This is the dew that comes from the level of Atik, which is the inner level of God's crown, the higher level of God's crown, which is going to be used to resurrect the dead when Mashiach comes. And this is, in other words, Bechinas Pinimius HaTorah, this is the secrets of the Torah. This is the idea of Chassidus. That's why we say, when it comes to Tal, Tizal Katal Imrasi. The Indian Tizal whom Loshan Nasal. It means it comes down the same way it is above. That's the word mazel, by the way. That's the meaning of mazel. What's mazel? What means luck? Luck means that what is above in heaven should come down here on earth. That's the meaning of mazel. Because sometimes your luck, your blessing gets stuck in heaven. The idea of mazel is that it comes down. This level of Tal Torah, the level of reign of Torah we have already now. But the level of Tal Torah, the level of the do of Torah, primarily will be after Mashiach comes. And that's the meaning, whoever is preoccupied and toils in Torah, Torah will revive him. In other words, by the fact that you learn Torah nowadays, the revealed Torah, then the Tal of Torah, which is the do of Torah, which is the premise of Torah, will revive you in the world to come. She'omer is al ashe mishu balakam talmud b'yodei shaydei limud nigla Torah talmudoi b'zman hazeh zeichim gili seder Torah las love. And that's the meaning. Fortunate is one who comes to heaven, to paradise, and his Talmud is in his hand, which means the Gemara is in his hand, the revealed Torah is in his hand. Why is he lucky? Because now he's going to get rewarded with Pnimius HaTorah, the secrets of the Torah. And that's the meaning. A new Torah will be revealed when Mashiach comes. Because primarily this level of Tal of Torah, the level of do, will be revealed when Mashiach comes. Even though we know already now, we have a taste of it, but it's very limited compared to the way it's going to be after Mashiach comes. Hey, and from here we understand now we understand why the idea of Tal, the idea of do, is connected to and associated with the idea that this will revive the dead in the future. Because what is the meaning of the resurrection of the dead, says the Rebbe here? It's not only, a dead person is going to come back to life. That's a very practical thing. It's a very physical thing. But there's a greater reality taking place at this time. Why does it mean that the dead people are going to come back to life? Means, in other words, it's a code word. That the Susudali Elah, that the awakening from above will be much higher than the awakening from below. That the reward that God is going to give us when Mashiach comes will be so much loftier than the action and the participation and the involvement that we put into the mitzvahs. Is going to be totally incomparable to the toil that we put into the mitzvahs. So, in other words, why does Tchias HaMesim? Of course, Tchias HaMesim means literally the resurrection of the dead, but it means much more than that. Tchias HaMesim means that we're talking about an era when the awakening from above, when God's blessings and God's kindness and beneficence is going to pour down upon us in such a way that's so magnanimous that it's going to be totally beyond our comprehension. It explains in many places this is one of the advantages of Tchias HaMesim, of the resurrection of the dead over Gan Eden. The Tchias HaMesim, as we know, Tchias HaMesim is above Gan Eden. Resurrection of the dead is a higher level than the soul's experience in paradise. As we know from the terminology of the bracha that we say every Shabbos, Ein areich, that there's no comparison. Ve'ein zolsecha, ve'ein zlascha makein l'chaylam haba, Gan Eden. Kach, ve'ein demelach, mashienot chesamissim. We can't compare, we say, to Gan Eden, but surely, it's totally incomparable to Tchias HaMesim. In other words, paradise already is beyond our comprehension. Paradise is already beyond our understanding. But Tchias HaMesim is even greater than that. Yafal Pikein, as far as the meaning is greater than that, is going to be the revelation of the awakening from above, which is totally independent of the awakening from below. To get into paradise, therefore, there has to be the toil of mankind, humankind. There has to be the work before you get into paradise, and there has to be work in paradise. Which is, by the way, hinted in the verse in the Torah by Adam and Chava, who were in paradise, that God put them there la'avda, to work, u'lishamra, to protect. When you now Eden, which we know that in paradise they go higher and higher. They have that between one paradise and another level of paradise, they have to go through a amud, which is also known as a fiery river, which means it demands transformation, it demands work. And furthermore, not every person merits even to go into paradise. This is based on a person's preoccupation on work. However, when it comes to resurrection, every single Jew will be resurrected from the dead. And here we find that the Rebbe quotes from Yerushalmi that even though the Gemara says in the Bavli that every Jew has a place in the world to come, but then it goes on to say, besides, except for these people. The Yerushalmi explains, the Jerusalem Talmud explains, that it means that through refining these people who right now don't deserve it, eventually they will deserve it through the fact that they go through the purgatory process. And the answer is why? Because paradise is only the light and the vitality and the energy of Mamali Kalam, which is a limited light and therefore based on action. However, the revelation of the Chesameshim is from Seviv Kalamin, which is a sort of which is an awakening from above, which is totally independent from the awakening from below. Therefore, it is not dependent upon a person's actions. Rather, every single person has a place in the world to come. And that is the meaning of Taltchia. And that's why it's called the dew, because the dew does not depend on man's actions. As we spoke earlier, as we know that rain depends upon a person's actions, but dew is something which is totally above it. Up to chapter Vav. Next paragraph. Even though we say that primarily the dew represents the awakening from above, which is not dependent upon the awakening from below. Therefore, that is the meaning of Tchias HaMesim. The resurrection of the dead is going to come from this level of Atik. It's going to come from this level of the inner level of God's crown. And that will have the power to resurrect the dead. Ava became still in all. We must declare, and it is understandable, and is very logical, and actually simple. This is Geschmack zu sagen, and the Rebbe went on to say, it's actually Geschmack. It's pleasurable to say this. And that is what? That even now already a person has a taste of this. As we know, everything was given at Sinai. So even now, we could taste from paradise. Even now, we could taste from resurrection of the dead. Even now, we could taste from the towel of Techiyah. We could taste from this dew of resurrection. The Betanya, Shamavar Rabbeinu Hazokein, Alter Rebbe explains, being Gilya, Lukoshi, Los Love. ובפרט בתחילת המשים שכבר היו ללומים, אין זה בשעת מתן תורה כסיב, Atah יש לדעת. Already he says, God, you made yourself known. You showed yourself and made yourself known. In other words, this possibility of Techiyas HaMesim happening is not something that God has to recreate or innovate when Mashiach will come, but already it happened, and the potential is already now. Furthermore, it already happened. Already happened. In other words, already now within the realms of nature, the potential is there. Already within time and space, the potential is there of resurrection. As Alter Rebbe writes in Tanya, that this revelation of godliness that will take place when Mashiach will come, already was. What does it mean, kvad hoyle elamim? So he says the word olam means two things. There are two ways of understanding this. One is so what does it mean? We said this already happened once, but also another way of understanding this is that it is now in the world. And furthermore, when we call something by a name in Hebrew, that is the name that gives it energy. And that is what sustains that object. There's also the meaning, says the Rebbe. When we say that Matan Torah, the giving of the Torah will not be another time, what does that mean? God gave the Torah 3,300 years ago. We gave primarily the revealed Torah. Mashiach is going to come. He's going to reveal now the secrets of the Torah. And it's even like a called Torah Chadasha. It's a new level of Torah that the world never experienced. Yet, we declare, don't think you're going to have another Matan Torah. No, it's only once. What's so important about making that detail? Matan Torah meaning that everything already was given at Matan Torah the first time. There's no reason to have it a second time. Even Techiyas HaMesim was given at Matan Torah. We don't need it to happen again. Because everything already was there, was put into motion. And being that you don't need it, it's not going to happen. God doesn't do things in vain. So because already we had Matan Torah the first time and everything already was there, there's no reason to have it again. As we know, that the entire Torah, the 613 mitzvahs, and the 7 mitzvahs of the rabbis, and the 7 mitzvahs of the Noachites are all included in the 10 Commandments. And they were all given when? At Matan Torah, Shnitna Matan Torah. Not only is this true for Torah, but it's true for everything. All the levels of Torah, all the 4 and 5 levels of Torah, including the dew of Torah that will be revealed when Mashiach comes. Everything already was given at Matan Torah. Furthermore, it was not given to the elite. No one has a monopoly on it. It was given to every single Yid. You can tap into this level of Tchias HaMesim. As we know, the Torah was given to every Jew at Sinai who was standing at Sinai. Men, women, and children, and even women that were pregnant. In other words, a woman who's pregnant, you have to be careful. She can't drink wine, and she can't have any pressure. So when God spoke, I am God your Lord, every person heard it according to their capacity. Those that were more sensitive heard it on a lower tone. Those who are more coarse heard it on a higher tone. Each person heard it according to the way they were able to accept it. More than that, even the children inside the mother's womb also heard it. Furthermore, all the souls of all the generations, even the souls that did not yet come down to the world, also heard it. Or those souls that came down to the world and passed away. Everybody was there when the Torah was given. Fabulous. Okay, one final chapter. Chapter 7. However, even on this level of Tal Torah, even on this level of the dew of the Torah, that was given at Matan Torah, as we explained earlier, at this level of Chassidus, of Pnimius Torah, of the secrets of the Torah, and this level of the dew of the Torah already was given on Sinai. So this level of Tal Torah also has 2 levels. Bezefanim. Number 1 is the Efshesh Inyan Zeh Yitomun V'Nelam. Number 1, it could be like a treasure that is hidden and concealed from the eyes of all who try to look. As the Torah itself was truly also hidden before the giving of the Torah on Sinai. There were levels of Torah that were able to be understood, but many of the levels were concealed, and it wasn't available. Like today, it wasn't that accessible to every person. The Gam in the Peil Ilabi Israel can be pashtus. Shmi sheyesh b'baloisei etzer gadol harei av she'eni mishtamish by mezet sibashatia, but kol mokom yesh le edel gadol yeser. And the Rebbe says here a very important detail. At Sinai, each person was given this treasure, was given this Torah. And you now have in your house a treasure. So even though perhaps you don't have the key, let's say, or you have the key, but you're not allowed to open the box, but you know that in your house you have this treasure already, you become more valuable. The house becomes more valuable. You have this treasure, it's worth billions and billions of dollars. So this creates an Ilui Bi Yisrael. This elevates the value and the worth of the person. So the fact that God gave us at Sinai this Chemdegenuz, they gave us this treasure, even though perhaps we don't know how to use it or access it, the mere fact that it's in our house, we become much more valuable. We become billionaires, trillionaires. So therefore, the Gam in Zeppel Ilvis Rogme Pastor Shimi, she yes, by Bible say it's a godlary av, she name Stamish by Mezet Sibishiti, Makomaka Mishli Edek, Godl Yeser, Shenech of Usher Godl is now considered to be a very wealthy person. Genu la locha, Bilchas Erechin the Xiv, Alpi, Asha Tosi Yadoi, Yerachena Koin, Shatolui, Behesi Yadoi, Himishli, it's a Godl, Ashley Stamish, Nerech Usher. And the same is true when a Koyin estimates your value is based on what you have in your house, even though perhaps you're not using it or you're not accessing it. The fact that it's there, your erech, your value is now much more. This is understood by the famous Tigre Lud, merchants of Lud, and the same is true by the 70 nations of the world. In other words, you don't have to be Jewish to understand this. That if you have in your house a treasure worth $10 billion, you're now worth $10 billion. That is a human benimshal. If the fact that we were given this at Sinai, we now become much more valuable. How? Through the Kohen. When the Kohen comes to assess our value, he puts that into the equation. And God is a Kohen. However, this is not the ultimate novelty and innovation of Sinai, of Matan Torah. Because even before the giving of, before the Sinai, before the giving of the Torah and Sinai, Torah was already there in the world. But rather, what was the innovation of Sinai? The innovation of Sinai was now we have the permission to open up the treasure. We have the permission to go through all the manuscripts. We have the permission to learn it and internalize it. And the same is true not only with Torah, but the same is true with Tal Shabbat, the do of Torah. It's not good enough. And it's not enough that it was given at Sinai in a concealed manner. The objective is that it has to impact us, that we should now access and live with this eternal life. Just like when it comes to Torah, it's not nice, not enough that we have a Gemara on the shelf, and we have a Chumash on the shelf, or a Tanya on the shelf. But what's important is we open it up and we learn it and we internalize it. The same is true with the level of Tal of Torah, the resurrection of the Torah. It's not enough that we know that it's there, that was given on Sinai, but rather we have the capacity to go and truly use it and bring it into our daily life. Number one, by learning Chassidus, which is the true Tal Torah. Number two, literally that Hashem should bless each and every one of us with eternal life and eternal health and gesund and nachas. And we see very, very soon the coming of Mashiach, the Tchias HaMesim, this level of the Susat Le'ela, the awakening from above, B'mheira B'yemenu Amen.